Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's Professional Images for Print webinar from onOne Software and Datacolor. I'm Boris Bergman from Datacolor, and I'd like to welcome you to this webinar. Please allow me a few words, and then I'll hand you over to Bob Campbell and Richard West, who will perform this webinar here tonight. After their presentation, we will go into the chat and you will have the possibility to enter all the questions you have. And we think about 1 hour presentation in total, maybe a few minutes less, maybe a few minutes more, but I'm sure it will be very interesting here tonight. So, Rich, it's now your turn. Please, I will promote you to be the moderator now. Thank you.
Cool, thanks, Boris, and good evening, folks, and good evening to Bob. I gather he's out there, so nice to be here again. This evening we're going to be running through a double stream session. So we're going to kick off with talking a bit about the way in which we have problems in our lives which are down to the joys of color. And then Bob's going to be coming in and showing you some retouching and some great effects that he's going to put together with perfect effects, and therefore give you the opportunity to see, okay, this is why it's useful to work in a color managed environment, because if you can't see what you're retouching correctly, you really are sort of playing in the dark as far as what that end result is going to be. So let's kick off with a little bit of a theory behind the problem. For any of you out there that are photographers, then you'll be looking right from the left-hand side here, stage one, all the way through to the printing end of life potentially. Some of us though don't necessarily take photographs or don't necessarily print out, so maybe it's just the middle section of this little diagram that's relevant to you. The key thing is, okay, whether you've got the photographs or you're taking the pictures yourselves, or whether you're just retouching, basically, those images are going to come into you in one format. Someone will have taken those images and they'll potentially be in a particular, that have been seen in a particular viewing condition. You'll have looked at that, and as per this diagram here, when it's shot, it sort of looks fairly sort of ochre-y in the type of coloration on that image there. You can see in the camera viewfinder, and also on the disk that it's being transferred into. But the key thing here, one of the key areas where life can go terribly wrong for us, where you can be happily retouching away, thinking that, okay, I'm doing a great job of retouching, and unfortunately end up with something that doesn't look as good as it should, wherever that's being output. It doesn't have to be print, could be output onto the web, could be anywhere. And that's going to go wrong potentially if you haven't color managed your screens. So you really need to be getting into some form of control as far as the colors that are being displayed by the screens. Now that doesn't matter whether you're on a laptop or on a desktop machine or an iMac or some form of other type of computer, or maybe even working through a TV. If you don't get the colors displaying correctly, then you're going to be in slightly difficult situations. And of course that, in this particular workflow here, is being exacerbated because as you move from getting it in camera at stage 1 and 2 onto the screen, you see that obviously that screen is displaying with a bit of a green cast. Now that could be for numerous different reasons, but just basically the way the display is made up. So therefore your natural reaction when you see that on screen is going to be to try and take out the cast, to retouch, to adjust those images. And of course you'll therefore readjust as you work across from stage 3 to stage 5 there, ending up with an image which you think is pretty much how it was taken, how it was intended to be taken, how it was intended to be seen, and therefore you're thinking, great, okay, I've now retouched, I've got an image looking good, therefore wherever it goes, life's going to be a happy place. But of course, as you can see here, it isn't necessarily going to be the case, because if those monitors are off, you've just taken all that sort of green cast out of the image. Actually, what you've been doing is making your image a bit redder as a result. So therefore, stage 6, you're seeing something that has now got a red cast to it as opposed to a green cast. So not a great situation. And of course, that's if the world is a perfect place and whoever, be it you or whoever is printing out, can actually take that image as it's created now and print it out exactly the same. But of course, looking at stage 7, you can also get some poor calibration at stage 7 as well. And that's really going to be one of the key focuses of the second half of tonight's session, is the fact that, okay, I can adjust my screens, and we can talk through how to do that and get those working correctly using color management techniques. But we also need to be taking care of that back end. And again, that could be something that maybe you're giving off to somebody else. But if you're the person, or you're the company, you're the end repository doing that printing, then you really need to be able to adjust those colors there and make sure they are correct as well. So you need to have a color calibration method working through the whole of your workflow. And just quickly to think about the front end of things, just on the screen side of things, just on that display problem, where you've got that image and you've tried to correct for a particular cast or type of, maybe it's looking a bit too dark, too light, whatever it may be. There's so many different types of displays, so many different display options, be it on your laptop, be it on a phone. Loads of people, I use my iPad nowadays, or any other type of tablet, as a great portable solution for showing off portfolios of images. But again, if it's not right, then what sort of image is that going to create for your customers, friends, and viewers of your images, basically? So we need to be able to take account of all these different types of displays. And of course, displays, even if you have this lovely situation of having the same display, maybe you have a studio and you've invested in exactly the same displays, displays age as well. So therefore, you need to allow for the fact that, okay, things are going to be changing over time as well. So quite a few variables, aren't there? Maybe you're thinking, okay, I thought it was just retouching. But no, you need to be retouching, and you need to be doing that in an environment where you can actually trust what you're going to be outputting, what you're seeing is correct. So therefore, that might be the problem over, eh? But of course, there is that back end as well. That's step 7, which we've already thought about. And that's step 7 in itself, not just a case of going from computer to the printer, and you need that to be tuned or calibrated correctly. You've also got a whole bunch of different variables in just that one step, because you could use different papers. I could put it on fine art paper versus some sort of luster paper. I could use different types of inks. All of those parameters are going to change things as well. So that is exactly the stage we're going to look at the back end of this session, where we're going to say, okay, how do we correct for that multitude of different parameters? But first and foremost, let's consider how we can get what we're seeing on screen to look correct. Now, we could, for instance, use our lovely eyes, wonderful things that they are. We could be using our eyes to say, okay, I've got a brightness control, I've got some other controls for my displays. I know, I'll just adjust it. I'll have a look at my subject, perhaps I'm in a studio, and I'll just adjust it so the viewing conditions look the same. That's very clever of you, and best of luck to you, because what you need to consider is the fact that, okay, your eyes are not necessarily that trustworthy. So what I'd ask you to do, folks, just to firstly get into the sort of the mindset of why you need a specific device really to do your color calibration, is stare at the screen. Now, hopefully you're all seeing a red block and a green block, and in the middle is a white dot. So stare at that white dot. Just give it a few seconds, and when I press this button, and you'll see the outside change, keep on staring at that white dot. And now, if I click over to this image, now these two images are exactly the same. However, as your eyes are looking at them, certainly initially you will have seen, or I certainly saw, a difference between the two. On the left-hand side, I thought there was a lot redder, and on the right-hand side, it seems a lot greener. So therefore, this is how your eyes play tricks. Your rods and cones in the eyes absorb colors. There's chemicals moving around in there that really cause the eyes to play tricks on you. And that's exactly why using your own eyes to actually do your color management, to do your adjustment, to make sure what you're looking at is true color, is not necessarily the best idea. To give you another example, in this scenario here, the perception that square B there is in the shadow of that little cylinder makes you think that square B is actually lighter than square A. If I move in this little block here, you can see actually A and B are the same. Of course, again, your eyes are deceiving you slightly, because the color of the letter A and the color of the letter B are reversed, or one's light and one's dark, and that's affecting your perception again. So using your color sliders on your display, not a brilliant idea, folks. Really recommend you avoid that. And the good thing is, you don't have to do that, because we'll come to it a little bit later on. There are devices that you can use, Datacolor makes them, that you can actually calibrate your screens, not just the screen you're on, but all the screens you have. You can get yourself into a nice calibrated environment. Key thing we want to understand with this, first of all, is, okay, does it work? Well, how it works is based around this. It's based around ICC profiles. But I'm going to come out of the slideware now, and we're going to pop into something called the ColorSync utility. Now, this is something that is available on the Mac, and I believe there's something on Windows, albeit I'm not a Windows user myself, but there's something on Windows called Color, which does similar sorts of features. And on the Mac, what it gives me the opportunity to do is see the different types of color spaces that I've got. So if I click on, for instance, sRGB, I can see that color space. So I can see here, if I move this around, I've got a nice 3D model of all the colors that are viewable, graphical representation of all the colors that are viewable within the sRGB color space. Now, sRGB, standard red, green, blue, is the color space used by a lot of computers nowadays, or computer displays. So, for instance, I'm on a MacBook Pro, that pretty much displays all of the sRGB color space. However, a lot of people say, okay, we shoot in an Adobe RGB. Okay, well, let's just give you a quick example of the differences here between sRGB and Adobe RGB. So there's Adobe RGB. It's quite a bit bigger, isn't it? So if I just hold that for comparison and convert that into a little sort of mesh, and if I drop sRGB into that, you'll be able to see the difference between those two color spaces there. So in particular, over here on the green end of the spectrum, there's a heck of a lot more color that is, in inverted commas, viewable in the Adobe RGB space than there are in sRGB. So, key thought for you. If you're going to be retouching, you need to make a decision as to whether to work in Adobe RGB or sRGB, for instance. These are the two most popular color spaces to work in. Now, Adobe RGB is good because you've got more color space there, so when you retouch, you'll have more gamut of colors to play with. However, if you're viewing on a screen that doesn't display Adobe RGB, you're really hitting and hoping, because you can't see those colors. You don't know whether you are adjusting, in particular here, these sort of lighter greens. It may be it may be entirely poorly adjusted as a result of that. So I would suggest you need to check out what actually your screens can display. Now you can do that by getting a piece of Datacolor kit, a Spider for instance, and actually running a profile of it, and you'll see, for instance, I've got down here my laptop color space. So you can see there, for instance, if I actually compare that with sRGB, so let's click on sRGB and let's just hold that for comparison instead. So let's click comparisons and hold the sRGB color space for comparison and compare that with my laptop. You see very similar sort of color space there. So I'm pretty much able to see everything I'm retouching in if I work in sRGB. If I'm working in Adobe RGB, best of luck to you, because you've got that little bit of, well, quite a lot of extra gamut in there that you really, anything could be happening. So top advice, if you've got the opportunity, go and get a decent monitor like an ISO or an NEC, the ISO CG range, for instance. They display pretty much 98% plus of the Adobe RGB color space. So if you really want to be doing some great retouching, that would be a great display to be using, for instance, as a range of displays to be using. But there's plenty of other options out there you could be using. A lot of people talk about Pro Photo color space. That's the Pro Photo color space. I would severely avoid using that if I were you. But again, choice is yours, folks. So there's a little bit of an idea of how this color environment works. Hopefully that sort of explains to you a little bit more about what we're doing here. Later on, we'll talk about the joys of going from where we are now, which is this sRGB color space, and going from that into some of those printed outputs. So let's have a look at something like the web-coated environment. you can see there we have a big difference in color space. But we'll come back to that in a little bit. So let's pop back into the presentation, and I think at this point we're going to hand over to the lovely, the delightful Mr. Bob Campbell, who will be telling us the joys of part of this this suite of software that is his Perfect Photo Suite solution. It is Perfect Colors, and let's hand it over to the joyous Mr. Bob Campbell. And at this point, I'll ask, let's just pop up the change of presenter, and let's see if we can find Mr. Bob Campbell on that list, and I'll pass it over to you, Bob.
Thanks, Richard. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you fine, mate. Yep, absolutely.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody. Hello, good evening. Welcome to this joint webinar. I have a little sort of bit part, really, in this. So I just pop in for a couple of little presentations where I show you a product that onOne Software has developed, which is designed to enable you to adjust colors actually very easily into your digital photos. And that product, of course, is called Perfect Effects, and it's a product that comes free with your Spider 4 Elite product for the foreseeable future. I think it's a kind of summer offer. So I'm just going to talk for a short time about the processes involved. As you can see, I'm an old guy, and actually Richard said something really interesting about calibrating people's eyes, and I often think that when I take a picture with my digital camera, I'm never quite sure what's going to happen. So I certainly need the help of a good calibration system. So I use my Spider Elite on my machine here in the studio. And also, of course, I use onOne Software. So let's take a quick look at that. We're going to be talking about Perfect Effects 4 because that's a product that you receive for free. It's a totally free offer when you buy a Spider 4 Elite. It works as a plugin for Adobe Photoshop. So if your preferred workflow is Photoshop CS4, 5, 6, or the Creative Cloud editions, then Perfect Effects will run as a plugin inside of those programs. It's also a plugin for Photoshop Elements, and it's also a plugin for Adobe Photoshop Lightroom and Apple's Aperture. So if you're shooting raw files and you want to be able to edit those directly, including with layers inside of Lightroom and Aperture, then your Perfect Effects is actually going to come in really useful. It is also a standalone program. So it's rare for anybody to say that they don't have any other applications working alongside Perfect Effects. But if you don't, and you're brand new to digital photography, then you're going to get a lot of use out of this program. Now, the program is actually part of a suite of applications that onOne Software has developed. You can buy the entire suite of Perfect Photo Suite 7.5, and that consists of black and white applications, portrait applications, layering processes, effects, which is obviously what we're going to look at now, Perfect Resize, which is an amazing program, and as far as output is concerned, if you need really good interpolation, where you add new pixels into an image just to make it print better, then Perfect Resize, used to be called Genuine Fractals, is a fantastic program to look at. Perfect Mask is for cutting out backgrounds, and then Focal Point is for adjusting the depth of field in an image. All of these programs can be purchased individually. The fact that you now have a Perfect Effects when you purchase your Spider Elite means that you qualify for a special price on this suite as an owner of onOne Software. So I'll just quit from this little slideshow, and I'll quickly dive into the program and just show you what it's doing. So this is a basic introduction. If you want more detailed training and advice on the product, then the onOne website has a lot of information on there, including recorded demos and webinars. Richard, can you see that picture on the screen okay?
Ooh, yes, I can, but I've muted myself out.
Okay, it's Norway if you hadn't realised.
Is this your house?
That's strange, isn't it? It's in Cognac. And the reason it's not quite centered in the screen is that there's a few bars up the road that I had to just check the Cognac out, and it's ended up a bit skew-if. I'm going to go into Perfect Effects. Now, the interface that you'll see when Perfect Effects appears on your screens is a database of presets. It's over 400 different presets. And the ones that I would always start with, I hope that that's on everybody's screens now, is, of course, the color correction presets. And if I click on a volume of presets, I'm starting to say presets too many times probably, but you'll get used to that. Color correction gives me the ability to instantly correct the colors of my image. Why do I need to do that? Well, first of all, for instance, I need my system calibrating, but if I haven't got the settings right on my camera, the item that's delivering the image into my desktop, then I'm going to need to correct it. And I tell you what, the older I get, the more shots I take. For instance, I have to use autofocus because I really can't see, even through the lens, whether the focus is going to work for me. And that's a shame, but it's something I've come to terms with. I will never get the colors right in camera, so I certainly need to adjust them as much as I can inside my software. So here we are in Perfect Effects, over 400 different presets, and here's one that will warm the image. Some of these you'll notice have little white flags next to them because over time I've selected them as favorites. And I'll show you a little trick here. Let's just click once on the warmer preset, okay? It applies that warming process to my image. Then what I can do is adjust the amount of that preset. So I can very carefully assess how much warming I want to apply to my image. The reason it needs to be a little bit warmer is it was actually a sunny day in Cognac. Well, at least it was when I started drinking cognac up the road. By the time I got down to this doorway, I think the sun had just about gone in. I can adjust the amount of that warming, and if I have a perfectly calibrated screen, I can see exactly what the effect is going to be on my image. I also have, in the warmer effect, options. I can adjust the color temperature of the image. Once again, I'm doing this visually. I need a calibrated screen to make this work perfectly. But I know that with my slide, actually, Richard, I have to say that Boris gave me a bit of a hard time last time for not calibrating my screen too often. I think I probably said I did it every couple of months. I think you probably recommend doing it more than
Yeah,
that.
I did. I did hear that. I did think, yeah, well, that's because you're in those bars in Cognac too often, really, isn't it? But yeah, I
Did
certainly.
you think he was? Didn't you think he was rather rude as well? No,
I thought
I
he was
know.
perfectly correct, really, and and you know it
Okay.
too.
Well, it's right though. You know, you've got to calibrate your screen to the ambient light in the room, and all sorts of. There's loads of reasons why you've got to calibrate it regularly. I really don't do it enough, but this level of adjustment inside of Perfect Effects gives me perfect color control, really. So this is a nice process. Now, what we're doing here is applying an effect. I'm going to apply a reduced color effect now. A single click applies the effect into my image. It looks very much like a monochrome effect. It's almost grayscale. I'm going to reduce the amount of effect, so I'm making the layer that we've created called reduce color semi-transparent. And that's how we're adjusting effects inside here. Now, you'll notice that the warmer filter has been replaced completely by reduce color. What if I don't want that to happen? I want to reduce the color, but still make the picture warmer, then add a new layer. So under Effect Stack, click Add, creates an empty layer, and now this time I'll add my warming preset in there, and once again, reduce the amount of warming. So we've changed the entire balance, really, of the image. Now what we'll do is to move away from color correction, and this time I'll go to sharpening. Now, there are loads of different effects. Between you and me and the gatepost, as we say here, some of these I wouldn't use very often, but don't tell the developers over at onOne that. Some of them are fantastic. Others I wouldn't use very often, but there are some inside of sharpening that are absolutely wonderful. And one that I use a lot is called Texture Booster. So I'm going to add a new layer. So we now have 3 different layers, and I'll call it Texture Booster with a single click. Really pull out some of the very fine detail in the shot. Now, if that effect is a little bit overbearing, reduce it with the amount slider and adjust the amount of brightness and contrast. Once again, I have complete control over this particular effect. Once you've applied several different layers, there's no reason at all why you shouldn't go back to, say, warmer and readjust the amount of warming. Take reduce color and reintroduce a little more color into the image. So we're talking about balancing the colors perfectly, and once again, to do that, I need a really nicely balanced and calibrated screen. Now, I've created an effect. I've taken some presets that onOne software have provided me. I've actually taken 3 of them. I've tweaked each one. How about wanting to save this? I've done a little bit of work here. I don't want to waste it. So I'm going to go to the top of the screen where it says preset and say save preset. And the preset name in this case is going to be Bob Cognac, forgotten how to spell it. And the category that I will save it in is going to be Cognac Architecture. I can create any number of different categories. Cognac Architecture. The creator is Bob, and the description is probably irrelevant for this, but we can type any information in there that we want. So inside Bob Cognac, let's call it Bob Cognac 0001. I bet I've done that before, but let's try it anyway. Now say create. Now go to edit and reset everything that we've done, but don't panic, okay? Because I'm going to go to my presets. I'm not sure how this is following what the speed of refresh is on this, but we've got my presets, Cognac Architecture, Bob Cognac 0001. That's the brand new preset that we've just created. A single click applies the effect into my image. And then I go to apply the effect back into my Photoshop, my elements, my aperture, my Lightroom, or indeed in this case into the standalone entire suite that I've got. You'll notice top right hand corner with your perfect effects, you will start with perfect layers, but I also have perfect mask, portrait, black and white, focal point, and resize in here, okay? So that's a quick introduction to perfect effects. Hopefully it makes sense to you. You can use it in any workflow that you're comfortable working with, but just make sure everything's nice and calibrated, and you'll do fine. So, Richard, if you want to take the process back and carry on with your presentation, is that okay?
Yeah, I shall.
Do I need to give you the screen sharing back?
I think I can do it from here, actually. So,
good man. I'll leave it up to you. I'm useless with technology.
There we go. Yes, indeed. That was great, Bob. Thanks. And yeah, there doesn't seem to be too much of a time lag tonight, so all good there. Hopefully you're seeing my screen again now, are you?
Yep, perfect.
Great. Okay, cool. So thanks, Bob. I mean, that was super. Obviously, a very small taster of what you can do with perfect effects there. Apologies, I called it perfect colors earlier on, didn't I? I'm obviously being guided by the name of the presentation this evening, or the evening session. But yeah, fantastic software there. I mean, and such a good example of, okay, if you haven't got a trusted monitor, a display that you can look at and say, okay, I know this is how it will display if I'm looking at it on other machines that are calibrated, and if I've got a calibrated printer, for instance, this is how it's going to come out. Then great. You know, if you don't have that assurity, then you really are sort of shooting in the dark there to retouch there. So, so great example. So we've seen the idea of how we can actually use these color sync or ICC profiles to actually enable us to produce something that is a screen that is in a color managed environment, something you know what you're doing, so you can have a look at an sRGB screen. But how do I actually calibrate that screen? Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about now, and we're going to quickly sort of run through the solution, which is basically get yourself something like this, which is a Spider 4. So that's the color calibrator for displays from Datacolor. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of stuff other than just standard screens. So you can have, for instance, your laptops being calibrated with it. Projectors can be done with the sort of the higher end elite version if you get the upgrade for the software for that. And likewise, you could even, for instance, calibrate your iPads and so on in there. So therefore, the way it works is it gives you the opportunity to hang this little device. You can see it there on the top left hand corner, hanging on a screen there. The software, when you plug it in there into the machine, it runs on Mac or PC, doesn't matter which. It gives you that opportunity to run the software and says, okay, let's just check out, first of all, what sort of situation are you in? Have you actually turned your display on for half an hour before trying to calibrate it? Because vitally important, as we mentioned in the last part of the session, you need to have taken account of aging. And of course, the quickest bit of aging is that first half an hour after you turn your display on. It does need to warm up, basically, so then it's reached that sort of ambient point as far as the display is concerned. And it'll ask you, or give you another few prompts there. It'll ask you to make sure you're in a fairly ambient lighting condition, i.e. not directly in front of a window with the curtains wide open and subject to lots of different light conditions coming in from that, because as we've already shown you, your eyes can play tricks. So it doesn't matter how calibrated your displays are, if you've got varying lighting conditions around you, it's going to affect the way you're seeing colors. So try and make that as standardized as possible. Close those curtains, and perhaps a lot of people, if they're doing really color critical work, will actually do retouching at night, such that it really cuts down that variability as far as colors around you are concerned, lighting around you is concerned. What the software does then, it gives you this chance to run color swatches in front of the eye of that little colorimeter device. There you see the spider hanging there. There's a little eye pointing towards the screen, and it picks up light that's being displayed in front of it. So you're told where to hang the colorimeter, the spider, and so therefore you position it just over that little grid you can see on the software block there, and then it runs color swatches in front of the eye. The software knows what those color swatches should display as, how they should display color-wise, and if they're not spot on, it creates a little adjustment, and it starts adding up those different adjustments for the different types of color. And loads of different patches is running in front of the eye there. It takes about 4 or 5 minutes, but at the end of that you get something which is an ICC profile, which tells you how things are different, in what way your display is different from others. So if you remember where we were looking at with the joys of the color sync profiles, I showed you my laptop display profile there, which was slightly different from sRGB. So you can see how that's making a subtle difference there, just to allow for the differences. Because these subtle differences actually, when you're talking about retouching, could be quite serious. So therefore, you really need to be making sure you're doing this color calibration, as Bob was joking there about Boris giving him a hard time. You really should be doing this on a regular basis. So make sure you're doing this perhaps weekly or monthly if it's not such a critical issue for you. But I mean, I'd certainly recommend weekly for you to make sure you're keeping up with any potential changes to your scenario there, your lighting conditions. As mentioned, you can use this also on other devices like your iPads and tablet devices. We just launched the Android version of this software. Free software. Spider Gallery is free from either iTunes or Google Play. And you can download it onto your tablets. And I'm not sure whether it's on an Android phone yet or not. I need to check with Boris or one of the guys later on. But it basically gives you the opportunity to calibrate those devices. Now, it's not creating an ICC profile in the case of the iPad, for instance. It's creating a calibration, but you're not actually getting a true ICC profile at the back end of that. But it really is as good as you're going to get, given that tablets are going to be a limited color space compared to a limited resolution compared to what you get on, for instance, your computer screens and your laptops. So therefore, gives you that opportunity to do that calibration there. And of course, There are different types of devices. We have a multitude of different devices just at Datacolor. We have the Spider 4s, which come in 3 different varieties. I'll come to those in a second. We've got one specifically for HD TVs, or TVs basically. So if you're in the video world and you want to be calibrating your displays there, or perhaps if you're presenting a lot on larger displays, screens, etc., etc. And Bob and I both end up doing this at exhibitions, for instance. Great to have the opportunity to do that. So you can buy specifically the Spider TV HD device there. It costs about, I think it's about £100, 120 euros, that sort of price point. I have to say, if you are interested in that, but you do anything on a computer, well worth getting either the Spider Pro or the Spider Elite, because both those you can actually get a software upgrade to, or an upgrade to basically, that allows you to do TVs as well. So would be worth your while perhaps getting the Pro or the Elite in order to do both options. The Spider TV itself can't be cross-graded or upgraded in order to cover doing digital displays on computer screens, for instance. And Spider Gallery, that's the software there for your tablets. And just to run through the difference between the 3 Spider 4s, because these are our mainstay, these are best-selling, or one of the best-selling devices out there for color management. You've seen how they work. Different levels there. The Express is very much the entry-level one. If you've got one machine with one display, that's what you're going to be working on. Great. Fine, that'll do a good job of getting you there. Comes in, I think, somewhere around sort of £80, €100, that sort of cost point. But I would recommend, our 2 biggest sellers, the Pro or the Elite. If you can just stretch to an extra, I don't think it's about an extra €20, 100 extra 20 quid, get a Pro. Definitely worthwhile, because you get so much more with that. You get the opportunity to the ambient sensing, so you can check what's going on in your environment, so not just you having the opportunity to close your curtains, but the device will do it for you, and keep an eye on that. And you can use it on multiple screens on the same machine. So if, like me, you're on a laptop and you have an external screen on it for retouching, you like to have your palettes on one and retouch on another, then you can't do that with the Express. You'd need a Pro or the Elite. So get the Pro or the Elite. And the Elite has even more opportunities to do even higher end stuff. So for instance, the Elite will give you the opportunity to sample across the whole screen, such that you can check for hot spots. So well worthwhile getting that Elite if you're really color critical. The Pro tends to be probably our best selling calibrator on the basis that it covers the sort of semi-pros, I would imagine, pros and semi-pros, but the Elite is really, if you are running a studio and really want to get the best out of it, then go for the Elite. A little bit more expensive, but well worth it. So hopefully that's given you an idea of where we're going with this. I'm just going to quickly pop out of here again and set the scene for where we're going to come back to before I hand it over to Bob again, because what we're going to do in a little bit is we're going to be looking at the print end of things. But I started showing you this in the last session. So what we're looking at here is the color space for print versus the color space for, that was my sRGB, or pretty much my display there on my laptop. So for instance, the grid there, that's what I can see on my screen. That's what I can actually work in. But if I was printing out on this, which is, as you can see, US web-coated press, so that's the color profile, i.e. this color space, the printable colors that are available on this web-coated press. Now you can see here we've actually got some areas that are outside of what we can see on screen. So that's possibly, well, largely down to the fact that you're printing out on effectively web paper, which is going to soak up a lot of ink here. I mean, US newsprint, if we choose that, you're going to see even worse results. I mean, that is quite a dreadful color sync profile here. And this is why it's quite important to be able to do the color management, or have the color management capabilities here. So you need to be able to see correctly how your colors are displayed. And also it would be nice to be able to get to that point where you can actually show those colors. So when we're showing those colors for those important pieces of work is if, for instance, I wanted to take an image. So let's go and get an image over here. Choose something here. So what we've got, there's some zebras. Okay, so let's say that's going to be the front cover of a magazine I'm working on, or something like that. If I just find my color sync utility and drop that onto my color sync utility. You see it's going to pop open. I'll just zoom that back out again now because it's got a large shot. Zoom that back out again now. I'm in the color sync utility, but I'm actually using this to soft proof my images. So I could have done that great bit of work here. I mean, I could use that texture filters within Perfect Effects there and brought out more detail in here. I mean, it's looking a bit flat, so certainly it could do with some boost in here. So I could be working in the onOne software and get some tremendous end results from this. But what I need to be able to do is just to be able to see how that's going to actually display on, for instance, the printed end result. So if I've done this work on it, I'm quite happy with that because I'm working in sRGB, for instance, and I know that largely it's going to be popped onto the web, so great, I'm going to be seeing it in sRGB, and so will anybody else. So I know I'm working in the correct color space, and I've done that color retouching in the correct color space. But if I want to proof how it's going to come out in, for instance, that US newsprints, so what I need to do here is apply a profile to it. And this is all part of this color sync utility. So if you're on the Mac, you've got this opportunity to do this. I'm not tremendously sure there is the same sort of opportunity on Windows with this. I'm sure Boris could perhaps elucidate on that later on. But let's go and find that newsprint. So where is newsprint? There, I'm hovering over it. So if I just apply that US newsprint profile onto there, we're going to see a very subtle difference here, probably too subtle actually for this particular screen and doing this over the internet. But perhaps let's go and choose something. Let's go and choose an abstract style of effect, and you'll see that actually what we're getting here. So there we go. So what I've done here is I've applied a profile. Now in this case it's an abstract profile because obviously it's just giving it a blue tone. But you're seeing that this is actually being used as our color proofing environment for our final output. So I can get those profiles, and we'll come to how to generate those in a little bit. That's after Bob's next session. But we can generate any of these different profiles here using, again, some of the Datacolor technology, or you could be supplied these. But if you then import those into your profiles folders on the Mac or the PC, then you can then use that to actually soft proof the end result and check how that's going to come out. Now, very important, obviously, for those key images here. We'll come to other ways in which you can soft proof later on as well. But just to give you the idea that, okay, if you are creating something here and it is going to be a specific type of output, then great, I can go in here and I can actually see exactly what that end result is going to be as far as that soft proofing is concerned. And just for those of you who are interested, different types of color displaying here, color mapping here. What we're talking about here is actually how the colors are actually transferred from the RGB space into that CMYK space. So you can either map those colors and shrink those down into that color space and map them over. So find the nearest particular point. If there was something here you were retouching in the sort of greeny blue end, the software, for instance Photoshop will allow you to drop that into your color space here. Your RIPs will allow you to do that. But basically, you've got different ways in which you can work. But we can cover that off in a different session in more depth into the sort of pro end of color retouching and color management rather at another stage. But for now, let's pop back into, okay, so what are the benefits of this? You get your display looking correct. You run your Datacolor spider on your display. You do it on a regular basis, perhaps not once every 2 months as Bob does, because he's got that laissez-faire attitude as he's in his winery in Cognac. But once you've been able to do that, great. Okay, the one thing you want to be able to do is actually use your monitors and go in and do some great retouching. So if we pop back to Bob now and have a little bit more look at the joys of Perfect Effects 4, and also don't forget that is part of that whole Perfect Photo Suite. So therefore, you've got that opportunity to get something for free. Well, I say free. It's we've got the giveaway of the Perfect Effects 4 software included in the cost of the Spider Elite. So that was that top of the range Spider. It runs until September the 17th, the promotion. So if you buy a Spider Elite, even as part of the Spider Studio, which it comes in because we do a bigger pack which includes some of our other options there. But if you buy that before and register it before September the 17th, then you get a little code through from Bob and the lovely people at onOne that say, here's your software, go and download it. And of course, you can always upgrade that to the full suite later on. And once Bob's wowed us with a little bit more detail of that. So with that, let's pop back over to Bob if he's there. Bob, you there?
I am indeed.
Good man. I shall switch you over to being the presenter again and say let's see a little bit more of Perfect FX 4, please.
Okay, thanks very much, Richard. It just gets better and better, doesn't it? Looking at the calibration issues, I got to say, it's amazing stuff. By the end of this, I'm assuming that all of my prints won't come out bright purple. Is that the plan?
It really does depend on whether you calibrate more than once every 2 months, and also the second part of this session, which we'll be looking at how to actually get those printers correct, because as you've seen, there's a big change that can happen on that print, so therefore we need to make sure we know how it's going to print out.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll move on a little bit. Now, this is a picture of hopefully, Richard, you can see this strange image. It's a triangular house in the UK. Really terrible if you shop at IKEA, because I don't think they have any triangular furniture at all to fit it. But it's a very old building and an interesting shot. But I just want to make it a little more vibrant in terms of color and experiment a little bit more with perfect effects. So we're in effects. Here are the volumes of different presets. What I do want to be able to do, though, is to apply some of these presets selectively. I don't want to plaster all of my images with an effect. As someone who cares about his photography quite a lot, as a keen amateur, I like to enter competitions and things and win stuff if I can, bottles of wine preferably. I do need to be able to apply effects selectively, so just affect a part of the image, not the whole thing. Now, if we go to some of the more esoteric effects, there are some in here, for instance, movie looks, that are amazing. I never imagined for 1 minute that I would ever dip into a folder called movie looks and apply effects, but look at this, cyberpunk. Definitely not me, I'm far too old for cyberpunk, but if I make a single click on this, apply the effect of cyberpunk into the top layer of the effects stack. Remember, I can adjust it using the amount slider, and I have quite a lot of control over that, so I can make that top layer transparent if necessary to reveal the original image. This is lossless image editing, by the way. We don't edit the original picture. Instantly, I've got something that looks like a very bright moonlit night. Kind of an interesting effect. There are lots and lots of others, as you've seen, over 400. And with the ability to control the detail in a lot of these effects, it really is an infinite palette of different effects that you can apply to any of your images. So it really is fantastic. For the landscape photographer, for the portrait photographer, there is everything in here that you'll need to adjust most of your images. But let's take a look at that selective editing of images first, shall we? Let's go to the HDR presets, high dynamic range. High dynamic range would normally be the ability of a good photographer to take several different exposures to get the sky right, to get the foreground right, or whatever right in the image. And I say a good photographer because my HDR isn't as good as it should be, I'm sure. So what I would do instead is to just use the little pull down arrow and use HDR look surreal. Let's apply it to the picture again with a single click. Now, the HDR looks don't really do the kind of detailed tone mapping that you would expect with a proper piece of HDR software. It's a simulation of the effect, but it's actually a pretty good simulation in many respects. The problem with the effect, of course, is it's applied to the whole picture. So the sky suddenly becomes harder and more textured. The building itself looks fantastic, I think, but then remember, I can't see it properly anyway with my poor old eyes. But it's not too bad. Once again, I can just adjust the amount of the effect so it's not too intense. I can split the screen in two by going down to the little box with a capital letter A in it, or R for our European friends, and just split the screen so I can see the original image, which is not that bad in the first place, I like to tell myself, and the new image that we've started to adjust, okay? Now, what if we decide that we want to apply this HDR look surreal. It's a pretty intense HDR look selectively. Okay, I'm going to go back to preview the image in a single form on screen, so we've got the HDR effect applied to the picture. I then go up to a very simple little tool palette. This software is not rocket science. We're not trying to confuse anybody. If you can't start using this software in the first 2 or 3 minutes that you've opened it, then I'll eat my hat if I can find one made of licorice. Let's go to a brush. And this time with the brush, I get a load of different brush controls, including whack-on controls to adjust the opacity or the size or the thickness of the effect that you're applying. If you need those, I'm using a mouse tonight, so it shouldn't worry me too much. And now what I will do is to switch the effect off by inverting it, making a negative layer mask, increasing the size of my brush with the bracket keys as you would expect. Now adjust the opacity of the brush stroke itself, and I'll pull that right back down to about 15 or 16, because I want to apply the effect subtly. I don't want to apply that really heavy HDR look, but I just want to be able to see the effect of the brush on the corner of the building, the corner closest to my eye. I can't imagine my eyes would see a lot of detail in this building if, for instance, I was looking at the top of the building, those little pointy bits on the top. You can see I'm not an architect. I don't know what they're called. The weird thing about the building is, yes, it's absolutely triangular. It's only built from 3 sides. It's in Northamptonshire. And it was built in 1593 by a Catholic nobleman who just got out of prison from being locked up by Queen Elizabeth I and decided to make a statement in the grounds of his house. So I'm applying this effect selectively. I'm going to increase the opacity a little bit more now, so I have more detail in this front corner of the building. Okay, the brickwork's fantastic because it's got these layered ironstone kind of bands, and I can't see much detail in the sunny part of the building, but the rest should have a reasonable amount of detail in those windows. Everything is 3s, Holy Trinity, apparently. If you're Catholic, you know all about this stuff. And there we go. There we are. The image is starting to look quite nice. Now, what I can do with that, I'm applying that. You can see the layer mask actually. The HDR look surreal layer now has a layer mask, so you can see where I've been painting away the layer mask to reveal the effect underneath. If I want to, I can use a little search up here, a keyword search. If I type in the word blue, I get all of the filters that will give me blue, in this case, onto my image. This is where, again, I need a calibrated screen because I won't be able to understand that some of these blues are very cyany and not quite as nice as I would like them to be. Others are a little bit different. So let's add a new empty layer to conserve the HDR effect that we've applied to the picture, and then a single click on blue applies a blue filter across the whole image. And once again, of course, if I go to my brush and I just ask the effect to invert, so we switch it off temporarily, and now I use the brush just to paint in the effect. And I'll change the opacity again. I'll move it down. A lot of these effects can be a little bit intense, so just make sure that you turn the effect down in terms of opacity so it makes the effect slightly transparent, and just paint that blue back in to the sky. It's just the sky that I want to affect, not any other part of the image, or maybe these little glass windows on the side of the building as well. Depends how deep we end up making the blue. So this becomes, I think, a fantastic creative tool in its own right. There's a lot more to perfect effects than you would first see when you open the box or download the software. It's a really, really nice piece of creative software for the digital photographer. Okay. Now, one thing I can do is to advise you that on our website you can download extra presets. So if there's a preset out of the over 400 presets that we have in the software, if there's one that you can't find, then please just check the onOnesoftware.com website after you've purchased your Spider 4 Elite, of course, and away you go. Now, I think that image looks a bit nicer. Let's see how we look in the original image. Indeed, the vibrancy of the blue in the sky has been bumped up a little bit, not too much, otherwise it just starts to look too intense. But certainly the detail in the near corner of the building is a lot nicer than it was. In fact, there's more detail in there than I thought I got in the original shot. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now, one other thing that we could try is, first of all, to apply the effect back into our Photoshop, Lightroom, Aperture, Elements, whichever workflow you decide to use. Of course, we're talking layers inside of Lightroom and Aperture as well. So inside your favorite raw workflow, you have complete layer capability now, which is fantastic. I think it's probably true to say that Lightroom is the more popular of the raw workflows simply because it's cross-platform. So it does a really nice job. And of course, it integrates nicely with the Photoshop CS products and CC products from Adobe as well. So we apply effects. There are a few effects in here. So we've put some blue tinting into the sky, and we've done some HDR effect, and now we have our image. I'll just try something else, because sometimes it's simply a case of trying to find more detail in an image. I'm going to open up a little background, and I'm going to say new to it. It's actually, I had a really nice holiday in France, obviously Cognac, and also Amboise, and a few other places beside. So I took the interior of this shot of a turret in a castle, and then I took this picture of this girl called Victoria and said add as a layer. I actually cut her out from a green screen background inside of Perfect Mask. It takes about 4 minutes or so to do this, and you retain all the detail of the hair. But it's the detail inside the jacket that I'm particularly interested in. Dive back in with that top layer selected, so we're not going to affect the background at all. Perfect Effects. And now in Perfect Effects, I go straight to my sharpening routines, and I'll pick the best sharpener called Texture Booster. And I use Texture Booster specifically because I can adjust all the details in this filter, in this preset. I can adjust the brightness, for instance. And pulling the brightness up reveals so much more information in the picture. And then adjusting the clarity really punches the textures and the detail in the gauntlets, the steel gloves that the girl's wearing. And then, of course, because I've applied an effect with this to the whole image, I'm going to paint back out the texture and the texturizing from the girl's face. So again, I have really nice control. Once again, adjusting the opacity, but just taking away the textures from the girl's face. Not worrying about the edge at all. That's all given to me because we're using a mask, remember? But there's my image. Now, yes, you can do a lot of this work in Photoshop. You can do quite a lot of this work these days in Lightroom, but of course you wouldn't have layers. In Photoshop, my issue with Photoshop is probably that it just takes me a lot longer because I've got to remember processes. Perfect Effects, the free program with your Spider 4 Elite, will give you straight access into hundreds of different filters and then the ability to edit them as you go. So, quick application of that back into my image, and I think I've got a ton more detail in the picture. The nice thing about this is, again, in the context of Datacolor, when my screen is calibrated, certainly for the first few days, the week or so that I need to do it now, I know, I get a beautiful result, really. So, okay, Richard, I'll hand back to you, I think. That's me done, probably. I'll hang around and answer any questions. I doubt whether there will be any questions, but just in case, I'll be here if anybody asks.
That's really cool. I mean, you've really only just scratched the surface, haven't you? It's amazing, just the joys of the ability to create your own presets is fantastic. I mean, the thing that really sort of scuppers me usually is just actually running out of the names to give them. So I saw some interesting ones in there from yours. So I see the I got the blues, obviously I guess that was one of your named ones, was it?
Definitely.
So yeah, indeed. So no, fantastic. I mean, really, really good. Thanks for that to really show some of the capabilities. But as I say, folks, key thing here is we really haven't covered. We've covered a very, very small amount of what you can do with Perfect Effects, and it's well worth getting your hands on that software if you can. So don't forget that comes bundled with the Elite at the moment, or it comes as a download if once you buy your Elite and register it before September the 17th. So we talked about printing. We've set the scene a little bit as far as, okay, we've seen how we're retouching here and how important it is to make sure that you're retouching on a screen you can actually trust what you're doing. So you're actually doing something that is correct. And then, of course, we've got that other end, haven't we? So we've got back into this scenario where we had our original little issue here. Let me just squeeze this out of the way. Sorry, something you can't see there on screen, but I can. So we've gone from this situation where we had that initial sort of conundrum of lots of different variables. We had that uncalibrated screen. We've now managed to solve that. So we've managed to take that out of the scenario. So we've no longer got that issue to worry about. So really the only issue we've got is if there is something going on at this end of the process, i.e. when you or someone is printing out. So you've seen how or see the output space that we've got with particular different types of printing devices, i.e. you can create a profile for those different printing devices. Of course, that's the thing. We don't really know yet how to create those profiles. Well, Datacolor once again has a lovely solution for doing just that. If you're printing out your own work and you want to make sure that, okay, I can guarantee I can see those colors as accurately as I possibly can and be retouching, and maybe have different profiles for different types of paper, different types of ink, then you need to get a spider print. Good thing about this is I've used lots of different color calibration devices over the years for both displays and the print end of things. Now, some of the devices I've used at the print end are, cost thousands and thousands of pounds or euros. The spider print really is a very affordable solution. It comes in somewhere around, I think it's around £300, 300 euros, that sort of range of money. So very, very cost effective compared to a lot of the other solutions out there, and allows you to create a different profile for different types of stock, different types of ink, and of course taking account of, once again, things like print heads, aging or wearing basically, and different levels of ink in your printer. So therefore the way it works, simple enough, it's working in reflective color. So it kind of looks a lot like the spider that you use on screen, the Spider 4 there. But actually it's a very different type of technology in there. It's actually emitting color and bouncing it back off of your print and pulling it back into the optics within the spider print device, and therefore it's reading a reflective color. So it's actually a subtractive process, sort of working in negative, if you like, as opposed to transmissive color, what you're getting out of your displays. It's very simple to use. That's the device on the right, and you can just print off color swatches of colors. Again, it comes with software. Plug it into your PC or your Mac, connect it to your printer, get that printer to print off these different color swatches, and then this is part of the reason why it's less expensive than some of those big robotized thousands of pounds versions of these machines out there. You are manually running the device yourself. So you're just putting the little guide over the printout and rolling it down the guide, pressing a button and just scanning that across each line of colors. And very simple process. It doesn't take very long at all, maybe 5-10 minutes perhaps at most. And out the back end of that, you're getting that opportunity to really instantly create your own profiles that you can then save again into your devices, such that, okay, you then know how to export your images, and you're going to see how they're going to work. Now, we've shown you the color sync utility on the Mac. Bob's mentioned Lightroom, and Lightroom obviously works very well with Perfect Effects and the rest of the onOne suite there. So basically, just to quickly pop into Lightroom for those of you who haven't, who I'm assuming a lot of you have seen Lightroom. It's a great software for organizing and controlling your images and really getting into different types of environment. What we've got here is just an image actually of another one of the range of products from Datacolor. This is the Spider Cube. If you want a 3D grayscale to actually be able to use for setting white point, for instance, then this is the tool to use, because it has the benefit over its sort of flat grey card brethren of the fact that, okay, it doesn't matter where the light is coming from. If you're in your development software, be it Photoshop or in this case Lightroom or the onOne suite, etc., you can actually go in here and you can set that white point by, you know that it doesn't matter whether I've got light coming in from the left or the right, or if the light changes, I'm always going to have one area that's going to be lighter, so therefore I can set that white point as a result of that. And I can even see the scintillation points, the outer gallant points basically within the software. However, what we're popping into here for is to actually have a look at soft proofing. So just to show you, there's the soft proofing tool on here. And once you've applied that, or tick the box of soft proofing, you can then go in and actually apply those different profiles. So run your spider print, create those profiles, takes them into your operating system automatically, and then you can just choose those within Lightroom. So if at the moment it's showing us sRGB, so we're actually working in that sRGB color space. But if I click on here, I can, for instance, change that to, I've done a quick color profile of something which is a lovely printer for doing office work like letters and so on, but not very good for printing out images. So that's how this image would look on that particular printer. So you can see here instantly how I can suddenly see, okay, this is what this is going to print out like. If I don't do something about this for this particular output, I'm going to be scuppered. So highly recommend that if you find that's the situation, you need to be going in here, perhaps pop it into the Perfect Effects software to boost it again, or just quickly do a little bit of correction in Lightroom, for instance. Just bring those colors back in there. Maybe drop down the exposure to actually take it out of the light overexposed image it looks at the moment, and definitely create that proof copy rather than actually working on the original there. So you've always got the original to go back to as far as that's concerned. But that's a quick way in which we can show you how you can adjust your images there as far as or soft proof those images. But let's quickly just pop back in here because we're already running over. I was going to show you some automation tonight. I think we're going to have to save that until next time. So we've got another webinar in about 3 weeks' time. Both Bob and I think, are doing that again. So at that point, I'll go into more how to automate your workflows and create, for instance, batch processes which will allow you to work on your images in Perfect Effects, drop them into a folder if you want, and then process those out on an automated basis, adding in particular profiles, output profiles for particular different devices. So let's just quickly prompt you with a few frequently asked questions. So some of the things that we get asked on a regular basis, we'll try and get ahead of the game with those questions tonight. If, for instance, you don't print out yourself, but you do your own retouching, and you really, you want to be able to put yourself in the situation where, okay, I can trust what I'm retouching here is going to be printed out correctly, and it's got to look how I've done it, how I've worked on it, then the simple thing you need to do is just to get the profiles from your output companies. If those companies can't supply you a profile, I would highly recommend you shouldn't be working with them. But if they just say, okay, well, we color manage our end, as long as you therefore have color managed your front end of the workflow, that display in particular, and you know that you're retouching in a ICC profiled environment, then okay, if they do not print it out in the way that you've been retouching, there is something wrong at that end. But you should be able to get those profiles from them. So any further information, folks, you need, we've scratched the surface of the Spider range of products and also the onOne range of products tonight. If you need more information on Spider range of products, the Datacolor range, then go to specifically spider.datacolor.com for information on Spider. I'm guessing we can also have a little moment to say to you, don't forget, we mentioned it, I think, a couple of times. If you get a Spider Elite at the moment, if you buy one, or even if you already have one and you haven't registered it yet, if you register it before September the 17th, I think it is, and it's a Spider 4 Elite, then you will get a nice little code come through from the lovely people at onOne that says, thank you very much, and here is your free copy of the Perfect Effects 4 Premium Edition to download, and then you can see exactly, there's tons more you can do with the software than we've been able to show you tonight. If you do want to buy an Elite, then don't forget we've got our own web store there, so the spider.datacolor.com/orders. You go to our web store, or we have lots of very nice resellers out there that you can also be talking to. And also, few last points, if you want to get any more information, again, we've covered a lot tonight, but only in very brief detail. Go to the following URL. That's the English version of our ebook. Fantastic book with lots and lots and lots of information all about color management, how to do it, how to get the best out of it, covering other areas we haven't really had a chance to even talk about tonight, such as camera calibration. In fact, Bob mentioned his poorly aging eyes. It must be all that cognac, I think, obviously causing the lack of ability to focus. But don't forget, if you do use autofocus, you might want to be checking out the actual focusing of your camera lenses with our lens count product as well. In fact, even if you don't use autofocus, it's a very useful tool to make sure that those lenses are as good as they should be, basically. Any further information, you can also get onto our YouTube channel. And lastly, don't forget to go and blog us and give us your feedback as far as any new product innovations or any questions you have. We also have a wonderful team of support over around the world now, basically. So if you have any gripping questions and we haven't answered them tonight, and we don't answer them in the following questions and answers session, then just drop a line to our support gentlemen and or ladies. I'm sure they'll be happy to help you. So, folks, with that, I will say thank you very much for your attention tonight, and we will pop it open now for questions and answers. So I think at this point, and I apologize for running over a little bit tonight, but we was obviously trying to cram a lot into our session. Boris, if you are there, over to you, Albin, to have a run through on the questions and answers.
Okay, here we are. Questions and answers are already open, so please feel free to enter all the questions. And Bob, I will have just set up a calendar date every 2 weeks to send out an email to you. Remember, calibration time.
I like your style. Yeah, I need that, definitely. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, we also do have a few questions we would like to answer. We would like to answer you. The very first one is: have your expectations been satisfied? Yes, but completely. No, please give us a feedback here. And here's a question. I was able to see other questions. Yes, maybe at the moment we haven't started to answer, so that's the very first one is yours that everybody can see now. And please feel free to enter all the questions you have. Okay, thank you for voting here. I will make this open to everybody.
Oh, well, we've split the difference, Bob. We've got some too technical, some too superficial. So apologies for those guys, and the 56% that did like it, then great, thank you. Next time, we will try and get some of that automation in there, so perhaps we'll be even more technical next time. But I will try and also be superficial at the same time. So
we will see. Okay, and we have another question to come from our side. The webinar was too long, too short, or just right. Please vote now. And as I can see, Rich, next time you could even be longer.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, the majority says 78% just right, as you can see now, but nobody gave us the feedback too long, so it could be even longer.
Well, we'll see if we can't stretch a little bit more into it next time.
Sorry, I have one vote against it.
Okay,
Because
mate.
it's
Yeah, you need to get
almost,
home early. Yeah, indeed.
you know, I'm 1 hour ahead, so.
Yeah, indeed. And Bob's got that enormous triangular-shaped gatehouse he has to go out and clean, so obviously he can't be here all night either.
Yeah. Okay, you see, there are a few. Link to the ebook. Oh, now the questions are coming. The link to the ebook, no problem. I will provide you with the link.
Actually,
So you've got the
guys,
spider capture. Sorry, go again.
no, it's all right. There's a customer question, but I did have a question that I wanted to ask, which might be
Okay, well
relevant.
let me just answer Joseph's first. So he's got a spider capture, but he's missing the print calibration, spider print. So there is a bundle which is the Spider Studio, isn't there? Which has doesn't have the spider capture in it, I believe. It's got uh, the spider, the camera, the screen calibration, and the spider print in there, if memory serves me correctly. Boris, you'll probably correct me on that.
The Spider Studio has the you see we have two packages, the Capture Pro and the Spider Studio. The Spider Studio comes with the Spider 4 Elite, with the Spider Print, and with the Spider Cube.
Yeah, indeed.
Spider
That's what I
Capture
thought.
Pro does not contain the spider print, but therefore the lens color is inside. So that's and the color checker, the um, uh, spider checker.
Spider Cube. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Spider Studio there has the very elite that allows you to get the joys of the onOne software with it as well. So all the more reason to go with that.
On the Capture Pro, yes. Unfortunately, I don't know why on the Studio not.
No?
It's the same sensor inside. Yeah, that's sorry.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't set up that rules. If you purchase the Spider for Elite, or if you purchase the package Spider Capture Pro, that is covering the onOne software.
Right. Okay. 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 Sorry, Bob. You had a question as well.
Well, I was going to say, someone like me tends to, every time I print something off, it comes out purple, as I already said. Not always that bad, but pretty bad. So I tend to use local labs who will print for me. How can I be sure that they're going to be using Datacolor Spider technology at their end, at their printer end? I mean, is there, can I provide them with profiles and will they work or what? I'm sure it's a big question, so you don't need to answer the whole thing in one go.
No, it's not in as much as this is down to the quality of the lab that you're talking to. I mean, this is where basically they should be using some form of calibration technology at their end, and therefore they should be able to supply you with the profiles so you can use those to soft proof it.
Right.
If they're no good, then they won't. Basically, there's a lot of people out there that say, "Oh, yeah, we take care of that on press if they're a full color press house, or we are color managed," but they aren't necessarily. So these are the sort of questions that the wary among us and those who want to get good color results should ask. And if the houses can't actually supply back the profiles, then it really would be recommended not to work with them. But
Yeah.
more than happy to. I'm sure if you find a house like that, then a printing house like that, then please tell them to get in touch with us because we can
Yeah.
solve their problems for them.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, good.
yeah, thanks, man.
Okay, so it looks like we are almost done because there's feedback like thank you, but that's it at the moment. So no other questions what I can see here in the list. So anything from your side, Bob? So otherwise, I would like to say
No, I think
thank you. Please, Bob.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I mean, it's nice to talk to your customers and see the sorts of issues out there. But I think we all suffer color problems from time to time, so it's great to know that there are really fantastic solutions to fix them. So yeah, no, I'm fine. Thanks very much.
Okay,
Cool.
so we're looking out for the next webinar with you, Bob, which will be on September the 5th. It will be in conjunction with Oliver Muse. The content will be about the web and the print, so it will be the entire workflow here.
Yeah.
So, and this we'll have at 7 o'clock in the evening UK time, September 5th. Please feel free to register on our website. And yeah, therefore, I would like to say thank you. Thank you to Richard. Thank you to you, Bob, from Datacolor's point of view. And hope to see everybody other who attended for this webinar tonight soon again. Please have a view at our website. And I hope you have enjoyed this webinar here tonight. Hope you have taken some valuable information with you. And I would like to say thank you. And Rich, it's you and Bob to close down this webinar tonight. Thanks.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks, Bob, for your time, and look forward to working with you again soon, mate. And well, good evening to everyone.
Thanks, Richard, and good evening from onOne.
Cheers.